Welcome to the Social Mission Revolution.
Each week we explore some of the greatest undertold stories of businesses and everyday people who are making their ultimate impact on the world through social mission. This is Social Mission Revolution.
And this is your host, Andrea Putting.
On today's Social Mission Revolution, I'm speaking with Warren Tate, and Warren is a professional speaker and author of a best-selling book and a speaking coach, and his message is all around communication, because he tells me constantly that communication can change your destination. So I've invited Warren on here today because he has become very passionate about something that is very relevant to what is happening, especially in Melbourne, where we live at the moment. So welcome, Warren.
Thanks for having me on, Andrea. Looking forward to this. I mean, I thought I would have been one of the first guests, but that's okay. I'm happy with this position. I'm happy that we got to speak.
Great. And so, Warren, we're going to start with the question that I ask everybody. If there was just one thing for you to fight for, what would that be?
Ooh, there's nothing like going big with the first question, is there?
Yeah, I know. It's good, isn't it?
Look, as you know, I'm extremely passionate about communication, but interpersonal communication. And as you quite rightly said at the beginning, I'm very passionate about the need to communicate in today's world more than ever. There are so many things going on that's impacting on all of us, both on an external level and an internal level, which impacts on us both in our personal lives and in our working lives. And it's just it really comes down to, if we hold things in and we don't speak to other people and communicate more effectively, and also be willing to share and be vulnerable about who we are and what we're about, and how things like COVID-19, how stage 4 lockdowns are impacting on people. If we don't start to communicate about this, it's going to have a far bigger implications than just what's going to happen economically. I mean, we already know that suicide rates have increased. We already know that family violence has increased. We already know that depression rates have increased. So we really need to start to call a friend today is the hashtag, by the way. I'll go off and digress. Call a friend today is what I'm trying to get that message out there, because we need to be communicating openly and be willing to share. Be willing to share how we're feeling, but also to check up on others who we think are going to be fine, but they're the ones who really possibly need it the most. So communication, and as I say, communication really can change your destination. Well, in this case, communication can change others' destination. I've lost 2 friends from suicide. And one of them I was communicating with probably 2 weeks prior to the incident. And for all intents and purposes, could not see that there was anything going on or wrong with his life. He was a very successful corporate man, very happy family man, all those sorts of things. But it's, he wasn't given permission, probably from myself and from others, to be able to communicate openly about how he was feeling and the vulnerabilities and the pressures and the depression that he was in and that state of mind he was in. So I'm just so passionate more than ever today about how we need to communicate with everyone and don't judge people. Just one last point. I'm going on.
Okay, keep going.
I'm going to go on a little bit more about this. But the other one thing that really frustrates me is what happens in social media, what happens in Facebook world. When people share an opinion and then they get berated, they get shot down, they get abused and all these sorts of things. And it's only an opinion. We're entitled to an opinion. It doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. But there's this world out there in our communication process that we must be right or wrong, and we can't have a differing point of view. And that, out of anything else regarding communication, that frustrates me no end, because I used to be quite I'd like to create a little bit of conflict in regards to a verbal stoush. I love being controversial because you should be able to put a different point of view across. But today I wind that back because of the vitriol that you can get if you voice a different opinion to what others think. So there's many various points of view there, and I hope you've caught some of them because I've got a feeling there's going to be more questions. But if we communicate more effectively with others, if we communicate more effectively with our internal voice, and if we communicate more effectively, more importantly in our households, whether that be with children or with your significant other, you can save a life, you could save a marriage, and you could help children grow up to be better individuals and better humans as they grow up as adults.
Yes, you took the one question and made it into a whole beautiful thing. And it's a really important issue because I know that the day that you first put on social media about call a friend, I stopped and thought about how I felt and how I was responding. And there's just so much loneliness involved in this. And to think about, well, would I reach out to somebody if I was feeling, do I reach out to someone when I'm feeling lonely and vulnerable? And the answer, quite honestly, is no, I won't. Very rarely would I do that.
And that's not uncommon.
No, and that's what I've been finding because I've been reading on this subject, that people don't. When you feel lonely, it's kind of almost like we're ashamed to admit that we are lonely. And instead that comes out in a variety of different ways within our lives. So with some people it can be anger, it can be depression, it can lead to violence, family issues along that way. There's just this whole gamut of different ways that we can express loneliness without even admitting it maybe to ourselves. So it's finding that.
And I think social media impacts on that as well, because on Facebook, you'll often see, I'm loving lockdown, I'm loving this because it's giving me time to rethink and re-strategize, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and all these positive outcomes. And you see these people going, making all these, really over-the-top confident statements. And that may be right and it may be wrong. They may be covering up a myriad of things, or they could be absolutely thriving. So therefore, when you see that, you feel guilty yourself and you go insular and you're afraid to show that vulnerable self because you're not like them. You're not cruising through this. You're not the champion. You're not kicking goals. You're not rethinking where you are and where you're going to be and how positive this is. And I question every single person that's ever done that sort of post, that they've never shared how they're really, really, truly feeling when they're a little bit down. And that's why sometimes I do call it fake book.
Yeah. And there's a thing with social media is that while it's a great way of us keeping connected and being able to share with people when we can't see them, especially at this time, but it's not the same as being face-to-face with somebody. You don't get that intimate conversation that you might get, that you really need. You're not going to divulge as much. It's kind of a block. And because we're not getting that close, intimate conversation that we have with friends, then that comes back to us as this area of loneliness, which is not pleasant.
Yeah, and these times and what we're going through, and I'm not going to use any of those catchphrase words because I despise them with a passion, so I'm going to avoid them all. But we are feeling, and we are emotional beings. I mean, this is the difference between ourselves more so than the animals and so forth. Although animals do have feelings, of course, but we actually put far more thought around them. And that capability can create all sorts of issues for us as well. And it's just frustrating that we feel that we can't share them and that we feel that we need to hold them in. What I find fascinating in these times is that no matter who you are, no matter what individual you think you are, no matter how strong you are. You might do your gratitudes every day, and you might be waking up every day and working through a process and going through routines. You're still going to have a time when you are going to feel absolute euphoria and absolute, almost in the pits of depression, because we're human beings, and we can't get through this without feeling those peaks and troughs of emotion. And these times are unique in every way. And how we react and the emotions and the heights and the lows of these emotions are going to be extremes. They're not going to be little ebbs and flows. They're going to be extremes. And we need to accept that. We need to accept that we are human beings and we do have feelings, and that it's okay to feel that way. There's always these people that say, oh, no, you shouldn't be feeling that way. You should be so grateful for your life. You've got this, you've got that, all this sort of thing. But what's wrong with having a little bit of self-pity? What's wrong with feeling a little bit vulnerable and feeling a little bit down? Because it's natural in this environment. And, I could go into biology as well, and the biorhythms of the body and all those sorts of things. And yes, guys, we do go through ups and downs throughout various stages of each week and month. So when we do feel that as well. And that's probably a nice little segue into the male-female side of things. Because guys, the stiff upper lip and be stoic and all of that sort of nonsense, it's okay to feel a little bit vulnerable and to share it.
Yeah. Because
if you hold it in, it can create all sorts of other medical problems. It may not be depression, it may not be some serious suicidal thoughts or anything like that, but it can create other problems within the human body, which can manifest itself into other things further down the track, or maybe years down the track, all because you hold this within.
Yeah, and it does create a lot of issues that we don't realise in our physical being, in our well-being, loneliness, and all this stuff. It just is a deep.
Oh, well, I can go a little bit deeper now.
I'm starting to feel emotional thinking about this. So I was going to ask you, what has been your experience? Speaking of being vulnerable, let's be vulnerable and share, because it's through people saying that we've had these experiences, this is what we're going through, that help other people to understand that it's normal and this is what's happening.
Yeah, I think first time round back in March. Initially, and it did compound and evolve a little bit, that I was frustrated because it's, I love having the freedom of choice and the ability to move around and all those sorts of things. And it was until I really got to understand what's happening elsewhere and how really fortunate we are here, that I got my head around it. And also a couple of people told me that the impact that was having on others and bringing other people down. It wasn't my intention, far from it. But I realised, and I pulled myself up eventually and needed to stop that. Second time round, COVID 2.0 here. I got frustrated initially because it was, I believe, and I'll probably make it political here, but it was through mistakes of our leadership that created the state that we're in now. So that was annoying. But then yes, selfishness of other people and so forth. But I love transparency of communication. And I think leading into what happened on Sunday and the lockdown and stage 4, right through to today, the lack of communication, the lack of strategy, the lack of leadership has really got to me yesterday. I was quite angry yesterday because I had to deal with numerous leadership decisions from my own, based around a lack of information, a lack of leadership, a lack of strategy, which I'm all about in communicating. Because when you have clear process and clear communication channels, that's where everything works. But there's none of that. And we're running blind still to today, to this very moment in time today. I've been checking with the news feeds and the updates on, there will be some changes that will be made within certain industries, but they still haven't come through yet. And that has got me frustrated again. So when they come through, I think I'll be okay again. I'll be out the other side. But yeah, was I angry last night? Bloody oath I was.
Yes. I can understand a lot of people have been feeling angry and upset because I speak to people on I have friends on both ends of the spectrum about where this all is. I've got friends who are completely petrified about everything and afraid that everyone's going to get it and doom and gloom. And then I have other people on the other side of the spectrum who are completely conspiracy theory, which also is doom and gloom. So I have this saying that I use, that opposites are the same, and I thought about this and I'm thinking these people, everyone's, while they're thinking differently, it's still that same emotion, it's still that same fear and uncertainty happening in the world.
Yeah. Well, see, I had a session back into the States earlier this morning. I actually had two of them this morning, starting early at 6 and then going through just before this call here. And just the contrast as well. You know, people criticise Trump and his government and all these sorts of things and what's going on there. Yet, you know, the leadership or lack of leadership and the control or lack of control, at least they know where they stand. They know exactly what's going on. And they're gobsmacked. When I said we have a curfew of 8 o'clock, when I said we can only go out for 1 hour, we can only go shopping as one individual, they're looking at me thinking, are you for real? So when you hear the opinion of what you think is a country which is going through hundreds of thousands of deaths and so forth, and they still have their liberties where they can do things, and you see, you know, but there's a cost associated with that, obviously, with the amount of people who are catching it and the amount of people who will die from it.
Yeah.
So it's this balancing act and the mixed messages, and this is where I would prefer to be informed of every step of the way. So tell me how it's transmitted. Tell me, are these figures? You can't get the figures from the day before. They're doing testing and writing it on pieces of paper. So you know that the statistical information that we're getting through is 3-4 days old. It's not 1 day old. And so there you go. You just got an insight as to how my mind thinks around all this. And so therefore, you know, I'm an information guy. I love to have all the information and be able to make informed decisions. So that's why I believe communication is critical. Communication is critical in great leadership. Communication is critical in relationships. Communication is critical from teacher to student. Communication in all facets of life. We need to have more freedom about being able to speak our mind and being able to say, yeah, I screwed up. You know, the greatest leaders always put their hand up and say, yeah, I screwed up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Sorry.
That was my greatest leadership mentor. My father always kept saying to me, transparency, transparency. Constantly, it was his constant message to me about being a leader. It's transparent. But here we are to talk about how do we support those people around us. How can we better help our friends, our people we know, to get through this?
Yeah, and it's so important to just place one call. It only needs to be one call a day, but if you do it consistently every single day, you're touching base with 7 friends or 7 acquaintances or 7 people that you know in a week. And be prepared and be present in that phone call. I've been guilty of it in the past, and that's where I've made a real conscious shift to when I'm making these calls. For instance, it was only yesterday when I spoke to a mate called Jonesy up, he's in Kiama in New South Wales. I made a conscious effort to be separate from everything else so I could just focus on his words and what he was saying and how he was communicating with me, and just sharing a chat around his children, around my children, and just having an open dialogue about his work and everything else. Not saying, oh my God, what's happening down there? You know, not getting deep into the reads and saying it's screwed up and everything else, but just normal chit chat, like you're at a bar having a drink, which, you know, we can't do. So you may as well have it over the phone and have that bar chat if you're a bloke, or you know, a coffee chat or a wine chat or a champagne bubbles chat if you're a lady. Either or, shouldn't be judging. Some ladies like beer. But just have that open conversation like you're just chatting to a friend. And you don't know how much they need it at that point in time, how much they need it that day, how they're feeling, and how it could really turn their day around, or turn their hour around, turn their day around, turn their week around, or maybe, as I said before, change their destination on how they're thinking and where they were going and what they were possibly thinking of doing. So we just need to be connected. We need to make those phone calls. The most important aspect of it, there's no point making those phone calls and being busy doing other things. I mean, I'm lucky that I'm a bloke. I can only do one thing at a time. So,
So you don't sit in front of your computer when you make a phone call?
No, you turn everything off. You turn off all distractions, and it's about being present.
Yeah.
And I believe it's the biggest gift you can give anybody, especially today, is your presence in communication. To listen to every word. You know, if it's in a Zoom environment, even better, because then you can see their facial expressions. You can see their body language. You're not just relying on their tone of voice.
Yeah.
And you can really understand who they are, what they're about, and really have a deeper connection, because we need to build a bigger, stronger, deeper connection more than ever, because the stats don't lie. What's going on is far greater than the economy and the financial degradation of what's going on because of this. What's happening with the mental health and that side of it is 10 times greater than what's going on in the economy, 10 times greater. And it impacts on far more people.
Yeah. And I think we're going to have to also, a lot of relationships will have to be rebuilt afterwards, because people have been involved in groups and organisations and things, and suddenly that's been cut off for 6 months at least at this point. And will people return to those? How are we going to rebuild all of those connections is something that we've got to be aware of, because we just have broken this down. We're being pulled apart and segregated, which is not good for us, because we are meant to be in community.
Point of view of where I work in the corporate world, that connection, I mean, from birth, we are connected. We are connected beings. It's, you know, they talk about the impact of childhood if that child isn't straight into the nursing of the mother, and how that impacts on them and their growth and their mental growth in the future. We need that. We need that more than ever. And I'll put my hand up. I've been guilty in the past of choosing other things that I've needed to do over connecting with people that I should be connecting with, whether that be in social environments, whether that be one-on-one, because I said, oh, that can wait. They're always going to be there. I can do that at some other time.
They're always going to be there, though, are they?
No.
You don't know when someone's going to just not be there. Because I know one of my own stories is of my sister, of having this moment of deep clarity, looking at her across the room and thinking, my God, I'm so proud of who you are. And then never having the chance to see her, because the next time I saw her, she was lying brain dead on a gurney in a hospital. So we can't wait. We can't assume that person's always going to be there, because at some stage that might not be the fact. So,
yes, well, a person who you know and I've had the good fortune to mentor and coach, Sean Bell. You know, and his message is, live your dreams today because you're not promised tomorrow.
Yeah.
And to have such a young man at 22 years of age to realise that is phenomenal, purely because he lost a close friend at age 19 or 20, I think it was. And that friend of his just never woke up. He just passed. And to this day, they medically don't know what happened. Yeah. Now, you know, that's just one instant. I mean, we've all had unfortunately, when you come of age, I mean, I'm young, of course. I won't talk about you, Andrea. But we tend to have all known somebody who may have taken their own life, or somebody who knows somebody else who. And what would you have done if you could have perhaps just said that last sentence to them, or told them how much they meant to you, or how amazing they are and what it is that they do, no matter how bad they're feeling at that moment in time.
Yeah.
You know, it's reaching out, it's communicating, it's making that connection, it's call a friend today and do it every day. And don't get too caught up and too busy in life to ignore and neglect them, because I have, and I'm doing this every single day, and I hope that it will continue on. Are my days busy? Yeah, yesterday was a nightmare of a day for me because dealing with all these issues heading into complete lockdown, but still managed to call a friend. So make sure everybody, please take that effort to call a friend today.
I want to turn it around, because this is something that's really I'm passionate about, is that when we're feeling down, when we're feeling lonely and depressed, and this does come from my own experience, that the one thing that can pull us out is reaching out to somebody else and making a difference in their life. So if you're feeling like, if you're feeling really like you just can't handle this anymore, hey, think about somebody else. How can you help them? How can you make a difference in their lives? And there's a whole lot of biological reasons that this works, but it's true that if we can get out of our own head thinking about ourselves and how bad our life is and start thinking about somebody else, then that just, it turns it around and makes an incredible difference. So it's not just making your life different, like your life better, it's making their life better. So through being of service to somebody else, you find the purpose and meaning in life that we all long for, to feel like our lives matter. And when you come down to it, when people are doing things like committing suicide, it's because they feel their life doesn't matter anymore. So that's just an important thing for us all to focus on and to make sure that we're doing for ourselves, is calling a friend today.
Pick it up, use it.
Well,
doesn't take much.
Hello, Warren. How are you feeling today?
Fabulous now, thank you. So they're by our sides every day.
Yes. Constantly.
Sometimes they're our heart rate monitor, because we go into panic mode when we can't find our phone. So if it's that important to you, make sure you pick it up and call somebody.
Well, I had my grandson over yesterday, and he's not even 18 months old yet, and he picks up my phone because he loves YouTube, loves music. But he went into the phone section and called one of my friends and made her day.
I love it.
Kate was very excited to get a phone call from my grandson. So,
glad to see he's on board.
He's on board. Okay, so what advice do you want to give people? I think we've already given that advice.
Just call somebody today. Call a friend today, and do it with a smile on your dial. And that will transfer through the universe, through the phone, through the connection, and people will hear it. They'll visualize it, and you can have a massive impact on their lives. I think today, more than ever, being the first day of this stage 4 lockdown, and I don't know when this will actually go live and go to air or whatever it's going to be, but I don't care what day of the week it is and what day of the year it is. Just pick up the goddamn phone and call a friend today. You never know that you could change their destination.
And if someone wants to get in touch with you about being coached for speaking, because I know that you're brilliant at that.
Well, thank you.
Or any of the other things that you are doing, how can they get in touch with you?
Just go straight to my website, warrentate.global. That's T-A-T-E, not the other way. So warrentate.global. And all the information's there. You can book a coaching session if you'd like, book a free 30-minute chat with me. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you. That'd be awesome. Because everything I say does come with a warranty. Yes, you knew that was coming.
Yes. Or you can grab one of Warren's books, because that gives you lots of clues on how to communicate with people on various levels. So I highly recommend that.
Available on the website as well.
Awesome. So I'd like to thank you today, Warren, for coming along and being a part of the Social Mission Revolution podcast.
Thank you very much for having me on, Andrea, and I hope it does make a difference to your audience, and it's been an honour having a chat with you. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll be back next time with another Social Mission Revolutionist.
This has been the Social Mission Revolution with Andrea Putting. Join me again next week when we'll speak to another social mission revolutionist who will inspire you on your journey to making your ultimate impact on the world.